Greetings everyone, peace to you all. Welcome to another episode of Praiseworthy Reviews,
Kratos of Sparta, you are hereby invited to a challenge,
where we go through video games to see if they are excellent and commendable. Today, we will be reviewing Santa Monica Studios' God of War Ragnarok Valhalla, the DLC included with the main game on Steam, to see if it is worth checking out. I usually don't review DLCs or even play them, but I heard a lot of great things about this one, particularly its quality in both gameplay and story, so I decided to give it a shot to see if it was worth it.
You're sure it's worth dying for?
As usual, we will be evaluating the game based on 5 criteria: fun factor, educational value, cultural value, spiritual value, and cost. For context, I did complete the main game to the credits, and I also completed Valhalla to the credits. So without further ado, let's jump in. The core gameplay of God of War Ragnarok Valhalla feels heavily inspired by the most celebrated roguelite in recent years, Hades. In fact, both have some connection with Greek mythology as a setting, although Valhalla seems only to take inspiration from Hades in terms of gameplay and not in terms of story or artistic design. Compared with the base game, Kratos starts out with all 3 weapons and all skills for those weapons. Progression is no longer tied to XP, and equipment doesn't really matter. It's basically all cosmetic. Instead, like most roguelites, progression is within each run or attempt at completing the procedurally generated series of encounters and rest areas that constitute one cycle. Each run starts with a few warm-up encounters, after which you choose a weapon glyph, which is a boost to one weapon skill from your 3 weapons. A perk glyph, which are generic passive abilities that can influence a wide variety of things, such as combat, defense, movement, etc. And finally, a runic attack, a specific light or heavy runic attack to use that corresponds to the weapon glyph chosen in the first room, which players should be familiar with from the base game. Since runic attacks recharge a lot more quickly than in the base game, this choice is incredibly important. These 3 choices generally form the foundation of your build. From there, players continue on, alternating encounter with rewards and restrooms until you start meeting the mini-bosses Valhalla's chosen, and finally, bosses. During each run, there are a lot of different types of rewards, such as stat glyphs, which boost base stats from the base game like strength, runic, or luck. Fleeting echoes, the per run game currency that can be used to purchase glyphs or bonuses at the Tablet of Endeavor, refills for health or rage, upgrades to runic attacks, recharges for relics, and even permanent currencies like mastery seals, spirit seals, crests, or divine triumphs, used for meta progression. Like many roguelites, meta progression is there to keep you motivated, with overarching progression that makes you stronger after each run. After the completion of each run, mastery seals can be spent at the Tablet of Influence to increase Kratos' base stats, glyph slots, and even resurrection stones. Spirit seals can be spent at the Tablet of Reflection to influence metagame boosts in each run, such as how much you get for opening chests or how much currency you start with. Generally speaking, the core gameplay loops are as engaging as the base game, but in a different genre, so I'm going to give Ragnarok Valhalla 5 stars for fun factor. There is generally less educational content in the DLC than in the base game, but I would propose that Valhalla is actually harder than the base game. There is one chest of the Norns with a few variations for all 3 weapons, but other than that, there are no puzzles. The reason I say Valhalla is even harder than the base game is because all the motor skill challenges are still present, but now there's the additional complexity of both strategic choices in each run, as well as meta progression choices, which feels even more important than general equipment choices or skill choices in leveling in the base game.
Seems it's the way of this place to offer you a choice.
One thing that Valhalla does really well is scaffold the player as the player learns. When I started playing Valhalla, I hadn't played Ragnarok in months, so I was really worried about being able to pick it up again, because I do remember being rather mediocre at the combat. Valhalla helps by easing the player back in gradually in different ways. Initially, the enemies are limited in variety and easier in difficulty. The runs are shorter and there are fewer choices. As the player progresses and completes each quest, the choices that can be made become more complex. Enemy variety and difficulty goes up, runs get longer, and eventually, bosses cap it off. Mini-bosses and bosses vary wildly in difficulty, but that actually feels okay because this is a roguelite, so that just feels like part of the gameplay. Unlike the base game, there's not a lot of factual knowledge to learn in the DLC, and sadly, no cool riddles from Mimir or Brock. Overall, I think Valhalla is more difficult than even the base game, but has less variety in what you can learn, so I'm going to assign it the same value as the base game, 4 stars for educational value. I won't rehash anything from the base game in terms of art, animation, or music, but I'll point out a few things that I thought were interesting. The UI styles are generally strong for the DLC, and I could generally figure out all the information I wanted in its attractive interface. Most enemies are from the base game, but there are a few new ones back from the Greek games, which look generally in line with the style of the Norse games. There is one main area that is supposed to represent a Greek setting, which does look attractive and very much like God of War. Voice acting consists mainly of Kratos, Mimir, and the Valkyries, with phenomenal deliveries from one returning actor, Crispin Freeman, as a former enemy of Kratos.
I have not forgotten the debt I owe you.
I mainly played this because I wanted to see more reflection and introspection from Kratos on his sinful past, as well as what direction he will move in the future, and I think the narrative does a reasonable job with that.
You are sure accepting Freya's offer is the right thing for me, or for the realms?
I think we're here to make sure about that, one way or the other.
In my opinion, the cultural impact of the DLC is probably less than that of the base games, so taking that into consideration, and the fact that artistically everything else is basically the same, I'm going to assign Valhalla 1 less star than the base game, giving it 4 stars for its cultural value. In terms of negative content, Valhalla retains the gratuitous violence and animations from the base game. Valhalla has arguably less vulgar language with fewer potty-mouthed characters around. There's not really a lot of positive content here either, since the DLC is mainly combat. There's one exception, and that is the consistent encouragement in perseverance, growth, and self-mastery, which the game does surprisingly well. Besides combat, there is also a very moving introspection and reflection, with some intelligent and meaningful moral analysis of Kratos' choices from the past games. For more analysis on the themes of the game, check out my biblical themes video for this DLC. The DLC is basically in line with the base game in terms of appropriateness, so I'm not going to say too much more on that. Therefore, I'm going to give Ragnarok Valhalla 4 stars for its spiritual value, the same as the base game. As a DLC, Ragnarok Valhalla is very accessible. For the time rich, you could continue grinding to unlock all the cosmetics, but I doubt that will be much fun. There are also a few extra super hard bosses to try that I didn't even bother attempting because I don't think I'm a good enough player. For the time poor, the main quest of the DLC can be completed in about 10 hours, depending on the difficulty you are playing at and your skill in the game. Roguelites can sometimes take a million hours to complete, but even on hard for a regular player like me, it only took approximately 25 hours. Although honestly, you could probably do it faster if you're better than me. Ragnarok Valhalla feels like it could be a $15 or $20 DLC easily and still be very good value, but it's free, which makes its value limited only by its time cost.
Sigrun believed I should see this through, that Valhalla can help.
Yes, she does.
Overall, based on the narrative accessibility and free price, I'm going to give Valhalla 5 stars for cost. God of War Ragnarok Valhalla is almost the perfect type of DLC. Its existence is not only inoffensive, but is generally a great addition. It is not necessary to play this DLC, but the DLC offers a new type of gameplay that is not just more grinding of the same. There are some great story moments and character development that feels very high quality, not in an unfinished way, but in a true epilogue. Most importantly, this DLC is free. Basically, if you like roguelites and want to experience Kratos and Mimir just a little more, it's good stuff. If not, no sweat. Based on the criteria discussed in the video, I subjectively assign God of War Ragnarok Valhalla, this DLC, the rating of priority purchase, or perhaps priority download. That's all I have for you in this video. Bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. If this video blessed you in some way, please consider watching some of my other videos, subscribing, or sharing with me some of your thoughts in the comments below.